Hi, Heidi. Heidi?
Hello?
John?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right, we're going to start the meeting. I'll call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. You can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, if you could, Mrs. Griffin, let the record show that Mr. DeRosa and Dr. Goldworkin are attending via conference call. And I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Fieser for the first agenda item, which is the Milford Public Schools Before and After School Child Care Program.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lennon, and members of the Board of Education. So we're delighted to be here this evening to talk about the Milford Public School Before and After School Child Care Program. You already heard from the Y. They came in July and did a thorough presentation with the board, so this now gives you an opportunity to hear about the program within the Milford Public Schools. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the two site leaders here who are then going to introduce the staff, most of the staff anyways, that constitute the Before and After School program at both Kennedy and at Pumpkin. So in the front row here, we have Barbara Kohlberg, who is from Pumpkin Delight, the site leader, and next to her is Sue Markolinsky, who is JFK's site leader. So would Barbara and would you and Sue want to introduce everybody else?
I have a few of my employees with me. This is Michelle D'Agostino.
And Michelle.
Marie Clark. And Marlene Roy.
And there are other staff as well who weren't able to be here. And Patty Sanger, who's the director of the program, unfortunately, due to some family illness, is not able to be here this evening. So we're sorry that she isn't here, but you need to know that we've been a lot in communication with her continuously leading up to today. So with that, I'm going to begin the program. You're going to click for me? Sure. So as I said, we're going to report on the Before and After School program, and it is at JFK and Pumpkin Delight. And what we want to do is to begin with the history of the program. I learned a lot about this in preparation for tonight's presentation. Interestingly enough, or believe it or not, the child care program in Milford goes back 30 years to 1985, when there were 9 elementary schools, and in all 9 elementary schools there was a before and after school child care program, and it was run by the YMCA. So that was 30 years ago. In the early 1990s, Simon Lake received a grant from the state which enabled them to provide a child care program that targeted low-income families. And the grant covered all costs. So what you see here is that the Y continues to offer its program in all 9 schools, but the yellow at the tip of the little school there is now the grant-run program, which actually is the program that has continued to today with some modifications, but that began again in the early 1990s. 10 years later, in the early 2000s, the Milford Public School program decided to expand beyond targeting only low-income students and wanted to be able to open the program up to any student at, this would have been at Simon Lake. And as a result, they actually offered a program, some kids that were completely no fee because they were the targeted kids who were low income, and then other students who did have to pay a fee in order to be a part of the program. But as a result of the expansion of that program, the Y was no longer needed. The program that was the Milford Public School run program was able to accommodate the needs of those families that wanted children in the school. So the Y then was providing its program in 8 of the schools in Milford. Then in 2010, Simon Lake was closed. And the students at Simon Lake were redistricted to both Pumpkin Delight as well as to John F. Kennedy. The before and after school program that had been at Simon Lake was so strong that the Board of Education at that time committed to continuing to offer that program to families as they moved to JFK and to Kennedy. Part of that was due to the fact that, you know, the families of that school, they lost their school, and, you know, here they had this strong before and after school program and really wanted to see it continue, and the board supported it continuing then. So that program was moved into Pumpkin and JFK. Again, there was not the need for the Y program, so the Y program then continued to offer its program in 6 now of the 8 elementary schools. This was beginning in 2010. And so we come to this school year, and in this school year, the Y is still offering its program in 6 of the schools, and the Milford Public School program is offered still at Pumpkin and JFK, but with the redistricting for this current school year, those students who were redistricted from Pumpkin Delight or Kennedy to Meadowside and Matheson for this school year, if they had been previously in the Milford Public School program at Pumpkin and Kennedy, they could be accommodated in the Y program at Matheson and Meadowside, but at the cost that they were paying for the Milford Public School program. So let me just stop there for a second. Any questions on the history? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the program. So the Milford Public School program, and this applies to both schools. So it opens at 7:15 a.m. Children can start to arrive. And then in the morning it closes when the normal school day begins, and kids would walk down the hall and go into their classes. Breakfast is not provided as part of the program, but children are welcome to bring their own breakfast and eat breakfast while they're there at the program. Morning activities include free play, games, toys, art, writing, a variety of activities for children. The after-school program, notice the change in the color of the sun. Kathy Benetti's expertise here. The after-school child care program begins immediately at the end of the day, which would be for both schools. Well, one school would begin at 3, where I get confused here, 3:05, and the other at 3:35. And both programs go until 6 p.m. And in the afternoon, a snack is provided to all children. Afternoon activities include free play, games, toys, art, writing. A lot of kids like to write. They also include time to work on homework. And you should know that sometimes there's communication between the staff and teachers in the schools, where a teacher might say something to one of the staff members about, so-and-so, struggling with such and such in mathematics, if you have some time to work with them in the homework piece of the afternoon. There are age-appropriately approved computer programs that sometimes are offered in the programs, particularly in the afternoon. And then also sometimes there are supervised outdoor activities for kids. Particularly on some of the beautiful days, it's good to get them outside. As far as the staffing goes, so I indicated to you that Patty Saban is the program director. Each school has a site leader for each shift, and you met both site leaders. This is for the AM and the PM. And then there are other support staff, which include, there are parents as part of the program, there are para-educators, there's a food service staff member, there's a media aide, and there are 2 high school students in the program. And when we look at staffing, you will see that in the morning, JFK has 4 staff members, and Delight has 3, and in the afternoon, JFK has 8, and Pumpkin Delight has 5. And some of the people who work in the morning may also work in the afternoon, but not necessarily 100%. So we just wanted to let you know that. And a question always arises, Mr. Wiskerman?
In the history, I mean, at the time Simon Lake closed, we were K to 5 schools.
Correct.
And then we switched to K2.
K2, 3, 5.
And the program was only in the K2 schools.
No, it was in both, K2,
It was
3,
in both.
5. And the reason it was in both was because
There were so many.
Right, because the Simon Lake students, depending upon which grade, went into one or the other of those buildings.
Okay, so we've continued to cover K through 5 throughout this process.
Correct, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
And a question is always raised about, is certification required for this program to run in the public schools? And the truth is, the state does not require a specific certification the way it might with an independent child care organization that would be running the programs. And the reason for that, and you see that here's the Connecticut General Statute, it basically provides that a program that's administered by a public school system is not required to be licensed to operate. And the reason for that is that it's assumed that the public school system retains ultimate responsibility for the management and oversight of the program. So it's our program, it's a Milford Public School program, and as such, we're responsible for it, and therefore the assumption is that we're doing things that we should be doing, and we wouldn't necessarily need to be certified in the way that, again, an independent vendor coming in would have to be certified. So with that, we're going to move to the enrollment and fees, et cetera. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Riccitelli.
Thank you, Dr. Feeser. Good evening, Mrs. Glennon and members of the board. So I'll take it from here, and because there's a lot of numbers, so I'm usually the numbers guy, and we'll go from here. So acceptance into both of the programs at 2 schools is on a first-come, first-served basis. There is a capacity that the schools can handle, and it's between, at JFK, it's between 60 to 65 students. At Pumpkin Delight, it's between 40 and 45 students. You can see the current enrollment at JFK is 34 in the morning and 66 in the afternoon. At Pumpkin Delight, it's 27 in the morning, 35 in the afternoon. And as you can see, there are 7 families on the waiting list for the afternoon session at JFK. There's not currently a waiting list for the AM at JFK or either of the sessions at Pumpkin Delight. So the total number of families that are served by the programs at each school are 61 families at JFK and 42 families at Pumpkin Delight.
Thank you, Mr. Riccitelli. The families on the waiting list, is that due to space constraints or staff constraints?
Space.
Okay.
Yeah. We're at 60 to 65 is about the number that we can handle. When we get higher than that, I believe it's just there's too many kids for the space that's there.
Okay.
So those have always been the numbers that we've worked with, those 2 schools.
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Riccitelli. The JFK numbers, you got almost twice as many in the PM as opposed to the AM. The number's not as stark at Pumpkin Delight. Any reasons why, thoughts why, or?
This is only conjecture on my part, but I think the number in the afternoon at Pumpkin Delight is influenced by the number of students who are bused to the Boys and Girls Club. The numbers were higher before the transportation was provided from Pumpkin Delight to Boys and Girls Club. I believe the numbers were higher at Pumpkin. But as we know, there are a full bus load and children on the waiting list from Pumpkin Delight to go to the Boys and Girls program. And we all know it's also because it's a very inexpensive program also.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So program fees. The program is self-funded. When we say that, we're saying that it's self-reliant, it runs on its own, it doesn't cost, or there's no monies attached from the Milford Public Schools budget. This is probably one thing that I learned here. I thought that we operated on a sliding scale. We do not. There's a one flat fee that's charged to all students and all families. If there's a hardship and it's demonstrated, it's brought to us usually by one of the staff of the program. Sometimes it could be a teacher. It goes to the principal, and if those hardships are there, we accommodate them in some way. And you'll see that when we get to the budget, about the amount of money that we spend on providing assistance, financial assistance in hardship cases. But it is not on a sliding scale, it's a flat fee. We also accept Care for Kids vouchers. Care for Kids is a state-funded income assistance program. I should point out that the Y also accepts those vouchers. And here's the fees. These are the current 15-16 fees for the program. There's a $25 non-refundable application fee. Parents commit to 181 days. So the fee is charged if there's, because of snow 1 week, there's only 3 days in the week. The family is billed for those 3 days for that week. But then by the end of the year, they've committed to there's 181 school days, and those 181 days would be billed for. The fees are the fees that are on this chart are based on a 5-day week. And the before school program for one child is $32.50 a week. You can see that we've extrapolated out to what the cost would be for a year. The after school program is $57.75 for a 5-day week. And if you go to both the before and after program, for one child, it's $75 a week, which would be extrapolated out to a little over $2,700 for the year. And of course, you can see the fees. If there's two children, there's a little bit of break that is given. We don't have any current children that have 3. No, we currently do not have any families that have 3 children in the program, but there is a corresponding break for children with, or families with 3 children in the program also.
Mr. Rich, can I ask a question at this point? Is there an option for less than 5 days a week? I thought we had gotten a sheet last year that indicated there were different rates.
No, actually, the Y charges by, if there's less days in the week, they only charge for the number of days that the student goes. And they do allow, I think in some cases, a 3-day program.
You could have a 3-day program or a 4-day program.
A week and a 5-day program per week. We don't.
Okay.
Families can decide on their own if they're only going to go for 3 days, but they're committing to 5. They're committing to all 181 days for the program that they're going to be in.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Moving on to the budget for the program. First, the expenses. Administrative salaries, which is basically Patty Saban's compensation and benefits, amounts to $36,628. All staff salaries and benefits, $159,000 and change. For total salaries and benefits of $195,741. Other expenses, office supplies, minimal, $24. Holiday gifts, it's been a practice in the program since it was at Simon Lake to give a small gift to the children at holiday time, and that has continued. And we think that that's a proper use of the funds since it's coming from their families anyway. That's been a popular program, and it continues to today. So we spend about $1,600 on the holiday gifts for the children. Sometimes, if there's, particularly in the summer, there's also a summer camp that is outside of this, but it's also run by the program. And if they have a track meet or something like that, they may buy ribbons or a small trophy that will be included in that line item. Field trips, this is mostly also in the summer program, but from time to time I'm told that we may have somebody come in with, we'll say, a pet or something like that, and That's included in field trips, although it might be somebody coming in to do some kind of program with the children. We do have afternoon snacks, and we spend $7,300 on food for the program. Instructional supplies, which would be things like crayons, pencils, composition books, things like that. You can see $1,355. And non-instructional supplies like Band-Aids, Kleenex, first aid kits, things like that. Again, minimal, but $85 on that. So total variable expenses is a little more than $12,000. And the total expenses for the 14-15 school year was $207,913.89. That's what it costs to run the program. Now on the income side, the fees we collected $246,771. We gained a little bit of interest, not very much, as you know, but there's the interest. And then here's where the hardship of financial assistance comes in. We either don't collect on a debt, or we provide financial assistance in a small way upon recommendation of the principal in the amount of approximately $8,500. So total income for the 14-15 year was $238,499, and then the balance calculation, the income $238,499 minus the expenses at $207,913. The program actually ran a surplus for the 14-15 school year of $30,585. And those monies go back into the program. Sometimes we may buy a piece of playground equipment at either of the two schools. Monies would come out of the surplus that we have. So that was the 14-15 school year budget. And I think that's it at this point.
To add, if I do you have a budget question?
Just on the, in the case where there is a surplus, are we allowed to carry that money over? Because we normally don't, except with that one exception we have.
Well, you have to remember that this is outside the general budget of the Board of Ed, so student activity funds. But it's still under the district, so that's true.
why.
No, but you can carry over. There's certain grant funds that can carry over from year to year, and this program, as long as the money stay within this program, they can't be spent for anything else. Right. Except for the child care program. Right. But they're accounted for each year and they're audited as part of the general audit.
So you have enough of a balance in case you have a year in which you run a deficit, you can cover that.
Correct.
Out of that surplus.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Federico?
Are these included in specific lines in our budget, or is it completely outside?
Completely outside our budget.
We never see it?
No.
Okay.
It's a completely separate fund.
Okay.
Just like. Well, like an enterprise fund, but we include it in student activities, because that's generally how we budget. It's either in the general funds, or it's in grant funds, or it's in student activity funds. And
okay.
That's just, this program is accounted for in student activities funds. And it has a lot of the same regulations as student activities do. When you raise money, we'll say for the band at one of the schools, that money stays within the band's student activities fund, or at that school, there's a separate account, and funds can be carried over from year to year, but it has to be spent on the band at that school. It can't be spent for anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Goldworkin.
Now, this includes the summer program as well as the before and after school program?
The budgeting does, yes, it does. It does. It includes everything. It includes all of the funds. The program in the summer, and ladies, correct me if I'm wrong, is fairly small. There's not a lot of students. It may be maybe about a dozen, 15 kids.
No, we had about 25, 26.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Consistently all summer.
Dr. Goldworkin, were you asking if the budget included the summer program?
Yes.
Okay.
And if it's since it seems that it does, is it possible to have the before school, after school broken out, separated from the summer?
Sure.
What did he say?
Yes,
Yes, we can get
he
that
can
to
get
you.
that to us.
And my other question is, can we get the numbers on the, or maybe we already got them in terms of the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA, how that compares to the fees for the Milford Public School program?
Yes, that was provided to you earlier, but we can provide it again.
Okay, if we could get it just in a chart so we can compare the different options that are out there.
So we'll provide that. We have made a detailed comparison between the YMCA program and the Milford Public School program, detailed. That was provided, so we'll send that again. With respect to the Boys and Girls Club, it's one fee for the entire year. It was $50 for years, and it now has gone up to $100. That's the cost for the Boys and Girls Club for the entire year. The only thing that I would underscore is that the Boys and Girls Club, it's a club program. It is not a child care program in the same fashion that either the Y or the Milford Public School program offers. So there's a distinction between the programs.
And for students to apply to the Boys and Girls Club, is there a limit to the number of students that they can take? I know there was they get free busing from 2 of the schools.
Correct. I believe that they have a limit on the number of children that they can accommodate on a daily basis. I don't think they have a limitation on the number of students that can be Boys and Girls Club members. But the thing is, their facilities only hold, or they can only handle a certain amount of students on a daily basis. And I don't know what that number is.
Any other questions? Yes.
That's it from me. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, Mrs. Casey. Mrs. Casey?
Just a comment. I just wanted to thank you for being here and thank you for all your hard work and your dedication to our students. You play such an important role in their life, and you give those parents that peace of mind that their kids are so well taken care of.
Thank you, it's nice to hear.
So if I could piggyback off of Mrs. Casey's statement, one of the comments that I would like to make about the program, and you see the women who are here before you, that you know, we have adults that are the dominant group of people that are working with children. Of all the staff members, there are 2, as I said, high school students, and I think that that's one thing that I think does distinguish the program. The second thing is that while I don't have all of the years of service, I know that many of the staff members have been in the program for years and years and years and years. So there's a relationship with kids, with families that just kind of, I would imagine some of you now have family members that you served they were children when you, and they're now
Right.
Adults. So there is this very strong relationship between the staff members and the families and children that are served.
I think Barbara's served the longest of anyone.
Well, I was a bus driver for 30 years also,
Yeah.
so.
Was it am I correct, 18 years you've been with the
Right.
program? Excellent. Thank you.
So are there any other questions? Was there any, Mr.
Can I make a
DeGrego?
comment?
Yeah.
I was telling Miss Barbara, my wife's son Al went to the program 20 years ago. Today he's a police officer, but he used to tell his mom, "Don't pick me up so quick."
I hear that often
He
myself.
loves Mrs. Pike. He loved Mrs. Pike, who's now Mrs. Vicino. But he said, "Don't pick me up right away, Mom." Love it.
Was there anything else as part of the presentation that you had to offer?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I guess going forward, board members, I believe, Mr. Riccitelli, you're still, in discussion with the YMCA programs as well?
We are. I know that the board was concerned about the differences in cost between the program that we offer and program that the Y offers. So we need to see where we're going to be next year. And we've been in continuing discussions with them. I think that the discussions have been very positive and productive. But we understand that we have a great program right here. So where we can, if we can accommodate, or if we can get closer in the cost between the two programs, maybe the Y can learn something from what we're doing in our program and maybe duplicate that. But they're very open to it. So we're continuing those discussions. And at some point we'll be able to come back to you and say, this is what we're able to do with fees in these schools and see where we go from there.
So clearly this is a conversation that will continue into the new year. But the board had wanted the information presented to us, so this is what administration provided for us. And Mr. Whiskeyman.
Today we have a great program in place and very experienced staff members who are running that program. One thought comes to mind that if we decided that we did want to expand this program even to one more school, what challenges would we face from a staffing standpoint, in terms of finding people who could, be in a position and have the kind of experiences that we have with our current staff. I'd be concerned certainly about any kind of rapid expansion, which is always a challenge when you try to bring new staff members on board to an existing program. So I just wanted to bring that thought forward to see what your thoughts might be in that regard.
So my thought would be, I don't know what the challenge would be. I think the unique piece of this program, as I just indicated, is the fact that you have so many adults that have been in the program for quite a while. And what happens frequently with before and after school programs is you have a turnover of staff, which is it's no fault of the people who are leaving. It's just that that's the nature of it, because the hours are very different. I mean, you can see it's until whatever 7:30 in the morning till maybe 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and then there's the afternoon segment. So it's not as if it's a straight 8-hour job or 6-hour job, etc. So I think that the difficulty would be, I think we probably could find people. It's the holding on. It's holding on so that you have some continuity and some, consistency, and also where there starts to again develop those relationships, which is what we gleaned is so much a part of the programs that are in existence right now. Just because, the folks that are there are so committed to the kids.
Yeah, it's just a thought of my own, but I always have a reluctance to disturb successful programs. And it seems to me that the accommodations that have been made are pretty successful at this point in time. Nonetheless, I certainly appreciate the exploration and the discussions that go on. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to also say thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the staff for running this wonderful program. Mr. Riccitelli, as you mentioned, you're in talks with the Y, and I'd be very interested in seeing what they come back with. I think I just want to note that I don't remember discussing this when we talked to the Y, but you said that students that were transferred to, I think it was Meadowside or Mathewson, were taken into the Y program at the same rate that they were paying before, which is wonderful and incredibly generous of the Y. But I can't help but ask if they could offer the program for that rate to those children. they should be able to do more for the other children that are in there in the same program at the same time receiving the exact same services. So
That's what we're beating them up on.
that's what you're working on. Great. Okay. All right.
That's our goal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on this topic? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Move on to the next agenda item then.
And the next item on the agenda is the revision to the transportation policy. This was the board asked us to bring forth revisions in light of the scenarios that were presented at the last meeting. So what's being brought forth is the first reading, and Mr. Chitelli, do you want to address this in more detail? Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Sure. As the board asked us to do, we are bringing forth the proposed revised policy as you directed us, which would include scenario number 2 from the last meeting in the presentation that we presented. But the only change to the policy is on page
Page 2.
Yeah, thank you. On page 2, under Article 3, General Provisions, eligibility for school transportation, under number 1, the walking distance for the students is in excess of the guidelines established by the board, which shall not exceed the following maximum distances. You chose to, in this scenario, to leave K through 5 at 1 mile. For students in middle school, or grades 6 through 8, would go from 1.5 miles down to 1 mile. And for students enrolled in high school, grades 9 through 12, under this scenario, would go down from 2 miles to 1.5 miles. So that's the only change in the policy, and we're presenting it to you for a first reading.
Okay, so board members, this is a first reading of a policy change that's been requested. So we would, if anybody has any specific questions on this, we can ask administration if we need any more information. It'll be brought back to our November 9th meeting for the second reading. Mr. Whiskeyman?
From a budgetary standpoint, I presume that should we elect to pass this change at our next meeting, that would be timely enough for you to incorporate within the next year's budget an accommodation for the costs that you have previously presented to us.
Correct. We're working on we've begun work on the budget now, but as you know, we don't present it to you until the first or second week in January. So yes, if this change was made, the resulting financial changes would be included in the budget that we bring to you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, Sue?
Yep. Yes, John?
Question through you to Mr. Richatelli. I know I asked this question last week, and I don't remember getting an answer. I asked a question about safety, about paving the roads, sidewalks, routes, and so forth, and it was more of a general statement falling under the auspice of condition of the roads, of how they stand now and what the city can do about it going forward. And I had asked Mr. Richatelli if he had had a chance to speak, or was he having plans to speak to the city side to address those concerns, because to me, we're making this a numbers game, and we're putting the lives of children in safety based upon how many buses we're running, how we're reducing our routes, and how many more kids we can get on the physical bus. So my question to you, Mr. Utility, is has that been done? Has that been thought about? Is it in consideration? What's the status of that?
The comments that you made at the last meeting, Mr. DeRosa, were brought to the attention of the mayor's office and the Public Works office. Yes.
I can also add that last year, when we had some conversation about this, I know I had reported back to the board that I had spoken with Mr. Saley, who had indicated that, you know, if there are specific areas that, in terms of sidewalks and, well, probably roads too, that we felt needed attention, or that was brought to our attention, needed attention, that, you know, we could let him know. So,
and in many cases we have, and when we do bring it to their attention, they're taken care of very quickly.
What was that, Mr. Richard? I couldn't hear you too well.
From time to time, when we see a hazardous condition or an area where, you know, a sidewalk needs to be repaired or a crosswalk needs to be painted, we will bring those to the attention of the Public Works Department, and they're very attentive to our needs and really accommodate those changes very quickly.
And what about shoveling? I know shoveling is a big issue where there's only so much a place to put snow, and concerns is around the corners. Kids having to walk those environments where there might not be a sidewalk and they got to walk through a pile of snow to get to a street, walk the route. Has that issue been addressed? Has that concern been brought up with Mr. Saley?
Yes, we're always in contact throughout the winter with the Public Works Department. But you have to realize, and I should say that at the request of some parents, the mayor held a meeting in his office where we were with the Public Works Director himself and other members on his staff. And one of there's two issues. There's those sidewalks that need to be shoveled by the city, or in some cases the state, and how those are handled. And then there are regular homeowners who there's an ordinance on the books which says within 24 hours after the end of a storm, a sidewalk has to be shoveled. That becomes an enforcement matter for the police department. Where they're identified, the police department will go out. They'll try and get the homeowner to shovel the sidewalk, and if they're unsuccessful, they can give out fines. But I think the Public Works Department is very aware of the areas that need to be, the public sidewalks that need to be taken care of. They make those a priority. And in cases where it's identified that those sidewalks have not been plowed in a timely manner, we bring it to their attention, and usually they'll jump immediately on it.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is out of line or not, Sue, Madam Chairwoman, but well, one question before I ask the out of line question. I'll say that before that. Will you, on page 7, where it shows approximately 250 new bus riders, 7 new high school bus runs, 2.5 new middle school bus runs, and 1 BOAG bus, 1 summer new BOAG bus.
Excuse me, Mr. DeRosa, excuse me, are you referring to our presentation from last week?
No, I'm referring to the packet.
Oh, that page 7, okay, thank you.
Sorry, I thought it was.
There's 2 page 7s.
Sorry.
All right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Do we have a listing of where those new riders are coming from? in
Yes.
what areas of the city we're picking up those new bus riders and new high school students?
Yes.
New middle school students?
Yes, it was included in the PowerPoint presentation that we made on October 12th. It's on page, hold on here. It's on slides 30, which identifies the new riders for law and foreign. It's on slide 31, which identifies the number of new riders at Laurelton and Platt Tech. And then it's on slide 34, where it identifies approximately how many new riders there would be at East Shore, Harborside, and West Shore. So those were included in your PowerPoint from the last meeting. They're all broken out there.
Yeah, I'll just refer back to that, and I will fold that. Any other questions on that?
Sure.
And I have any questions, I'll bring that specific area up next week. Just for giggles, I know last week we took a consensus vote, and we all, or not we all, but number 2 was seemingly the consensus vote that we wanted to look at and evaluate and change the policy for. Is there any reason why, or is there any reason why you couldn't very quickly come up with the number 1 scenario, just to see what it looks like, and then assign that cost the same way we did and approximates next year's budget?
Yes, I did that also in the package, your last
We
package.
have that.
Oh,
That's just the high school piece, correct?
Right. And the,
that's high school.
The number 1 scenario was only the high school.
No, it's middle school also.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
The number 1, what was the first scenario that we had asked for back in July?
First scenario was just changing the high
It
school.
was just changing the high school. Back in July, when we gave Mr. Riccitelli the directive to do the work to give us the data, was the first scenario was just reducing the high school to 1.5 miles. And the second scenario was doing both, reducing the high school to 1.5 miles and reducing the middle school to 1 mile. So when he gave it, so that's in the presentation that we got at the last meeting as well.
Okay, so this packet here has a typo?
Which packet? Oh, well, no, because we had, then when we directed him at the last meeting to come back with a first read, it was based on the second scenario.
It's on slide number 36 of the presentation, but scenario number 1, which was just the high schools, would be up to $216,000. And then when you add in the middle schools, which is scenario number 2, you could add up to another $72,000, which is where you get for scenario 2, $288,000. And that's on your slide number 36 from the last presentation.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you have any other questions, I'll formulate them and either send them the email or bring them up.
Well, we're not done yet.
Well, okay then. Don't say that.
No. Can I ask a question? I have a
Sure.
question. All right, I do have a question. I'm wondering if it's possible, so we have the 250 students that we're saying would be potentially added, affected. Is there a way to estimate how many of those 250 are currently eligible for the increased ridership program that we have? Can that be provided to us in the next week or so? Is that possible?
We should be able to do that. I should say that the majority of them are going to be eligible for.
I'm sorry, say.
I would just, without having dug into it, I would say that most of them are eligible. for the opt-in program, because anybody outside of 1.5 miles is probably not close to another stop. There are some that are outside, but we'll examine it and see if we can come up with a more precise answer.
All right, and then if you could, I think we already probably have this information from the audit work, the areas of town that were affected by the, once we looked into the policy and how it was being applied, there were, became clear that there were certain areas of town that had been receiving bus service out and did not really qualify for it within the guidelines of the policy. So that would be helpful for me personally. Are there any other questions? Mr. Sadi?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Riccitelli. Whether it's 250 or 260 or 230, my memory is when this discussion came up last year, there's really no effective way to determine how many people who are eligible to become walkers actually walk. Is that still, we don't have that ability to do that?
Correct. We just don't know how many walk and how many are driven to school. There's no way of telling that.
There's no way of really finding it out in a short period of time either by asking them to voluntarily let us know that, or?
Because then there's also the question of students that are eligible for the bus that get driven as well. I mean, the people being driven to school are a combination of potentially kids that walk and kids that could take the bus, but whose parents prefer to drive them for whatever reason.
We could put out a poll to parents, but it would be very unscientific, and it would be up to the parents whether they wanted to respond or they didn't want to respond. So I don't know how accurate that information would be.
Thank you.
Mr. DeGrego.
Yeah, I want to address a question to Mr. Riccitelli, if I may. It concerns the snow, because we're talking about that, and I thought maybe this might be a great time to ask Mr. Riccitelli. As far as I'm concerned, we're second to none with the DPW. Those guys work hard. When it snows, they always, first and paramount, is to clear the streets for emergency vehicles. That's what they do. They clear it so this way if an ambulance has to get off of Wheelers Farm Road or down West River Street or wherever it may be, there's access. Then comes the secondary cleaning. And this has been a concern with some people that live off of Wheelers Farm Road that expressed it to me. Mr. Riccitelli, like, say now little Johnny Jones is now getting buzzed, and where was a familiar site for DPW to put the snow for the emergency clearing? But now, 2 days later, schools are open, and little Johnny Jones has to go on that corner to wait for his bus in the dark or whatever. But there's a mound of snow there. So if the parent calls your office and tells you there's a problem, is that what you meant by, as problems come up, you take care of them?
Yeah, or if there are public sidewalks that for whatever reason didn't get shoveled right away.
Right.
Yeah, whenever any number of concerns that would come into our office, we would then pass on to Public Works, and they always take our calls right away and respond to us really immediately.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam
Just to
Chair.
dovetail on that, my recollection from the conversations last year was that routinely does happen, that you get phone calls that you pass along to Public Works.
Correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Other questions? Yes, Mrs. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Riccitelli. I just want to, first of all, thank you for bringing back this policy. And I just wanted to add one more point of concern for me. If there, I don't expect you to answer this now, but just to find a way, if there's anything you can do about the cost of that Trumbull-Voag bus. I mean, we talked about it at length last time. I know I said, what about a shorter bus? What about a van? But you know, it's a lot of money for 26 students, and I fully support that we have to give them a ride, but I would just ask between now and budget time, not today, but between now and budget time, that you check with Durham, see if there's any other way. You know, I know it's something you would normally do anyways, but really on that one area.
And I can assure you, I mean, we will take another look at it, but I can assure you that this was a major piece of the original cost-saving measures. And there was originally 2 buses. And when we removed 1 bus and we went to designated locations throughout the city, there was a tremendous amount of resistance. So we have to come up with designated locations that are within the walking distance and have a safe walking route for students of high school age. And when we took a look at the current students that we have in VOAG, because we don't know who's going to be there next year, or we don't know who the new incoming freshmen are going to be, what we found was there were at least 3 students that we would have to add another bus stop for. And if you add 3 more stops to the already long, early starting and late ending, and very long day that those students are on the bus, it's impossible to do. Now next year we could get, you know, incoming freshmen could replace outgoing seniors, and they all could be within that 1.5 miles. So if that happened next year, we wouldn't have to put 2 buses on. But we have to plan for, you're probably going to need 2 buses. We're at, I think we originally had 5 designated locations, and it was a long day for those students. Now I think we have 7, and we're just completely maxed out. As I told you at the last meeting, the first student is picked up at 5:59 in the morning. And that same student doesn't get home until after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't see any other way except adding another bus. And your idea was a great one, you know, couldn't we use one of the shorter buses? But you saw from the comparison, it doesn't save us any money really to do that. So we'll continue to look at it, and when if the board decides to make the change in the policy, when we actually do the routing next year, we're going to look at every single student, where they are, where we can find a designated spot, try and get it down to 1 bus. But realistically, if we lower that down to 1.5, we're probably going to be at 2 buses.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to thank you also, in your estimates, I know you were kind of on the conservative side. So we're talking about up to $288,000. And so I just want us to all keep that in mind, that it could very well be less. I mean, you identified a couple of areas, especially on the middle school, where right now the cost could be as low as, it looks like $16,000. And you're accounting for a couple of unknowns in there. So $288,000 is including $72,000 for the middle school.
Well, the middle school range is between $40,000 and $72,000, so it's not going to be below $40,000. And then in the high school range, it's between $168,000 and $216,000. So on the low end, on the lowest end you could possibly be, in our estimation, you're at $208,000. On the high end, in our estimation, it's $288,000.
Okay.
So that's the range, and it's probably going to be somewhere
in there.
In the middle.
Okay. Well, the reason I said 16,000 is because when I look at that chart on the middle school, there are three lines where it says a half.
Right.
And that's your placeholder.
Yep.
And it says current students can be accommodated on the current runs. So.
Correct. So you would even if we eliminated all 3 of those scenarios, the East Shore bus, the West Shore bus, and the private schools, it still amounts to $40,000 for the other, let's see.
Well, I see the Harborside bus is either 16 or 24, depending on whether it's
right.
2-tier or 3-tier.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I appreciate you being realistic and conservative.
To dovetail off of the small buses potentially for the VOAG. So the one thing I did hear at the last meeting, there's a very small cost difference for the bus itself. There could be differences in the cost of the fuel between a small bus and a large bus. So is that?
Not huge.
Not
It's-
huge.
It's the difference between diesel and gasoline. The smaller buses take gasoline, the larger buses
Okay.
take diesel, so it's not a huge difference, but it's a little bit cheaper to have gasoline rather than diesel.
And the size of the bus doesn't make, like, when you have a big tank of a car, you.
Well,
have
you
worse
probably use
gas
a little bit
mileage
less.
than-
Yeah.
And then, does anybody else have any questions? Mr.
I
Wiskman?
was just going to say, the cost of the bus seems to me driven more by the cost of the fact you have a driver, and their salary is the largest portion of the cost of running a bus. You're paying somebody to drive the bus. The rest of the costs are for the vehicle itself and for the gasoline,
Mhm.
wear and tear, maintenance, et cetera. But the big overwhelming cost, you have a driver, they're getting paid, and it's not like they're getting paid minimum wage. I mean, they're getting paid a
And-
reasonable
And
wage.
all those prices are locked in with us by contract, so we're not going to get away from those
So you
prices
add a
for those
bus,
size
you're
buses.
going to pay X number of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Okay, understand.
Other questions? So it had been suggested to me that there might, and I don't know if this is a fact or not, but there might be other communities that have similar, opt-in programs where they let students on the bus from the first day, and then if the bus fills up with students that actually live beyond the walking distance, it's like last on, first off, they have to give up their seat. Can you comment on that or give your perspective? I mean, you've been clear with us as to why you feel that you need until October 1st to be able to accommodate those families, but is there, any wiggle room there?
It's difficult. The office, from the beginning of school, really throughout the entire month of September, we're fielding phone calls, literally hundreds of phone calls with a staff of 2 people, and then adjusting routes, adjusting bus stops, adjusting routes. I mean, there are individual buses where we could say on day 1, we know that bus is not going to be full. But we also have on day 1 buses that are filled to the max, and we really don't know. So I pose a theoretical question. Would the board want us to treat somebody that we know we can accommodate immediately and get them on a bus, whereas somebody else may have to wait longer? I don't know. The other thing is, it's even though parents understand that they may have to give up their seat on the bus, it's a very difficult thing to take somebody's transportation away once they have it, as we know. So just those are factors that, I think the board needs to consider when looking at this.
Just trying to be thorough. Any other questions? No? Okay. Then, public comment. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs. The board encourages speakers not to express personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Milford Board of Education personnel or any person associated with the public school system. Security issues and matters relating to negotiations and grievances will not be permitted. Consistent with the principles of the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, discussion of students is prohibited absent parental waiver. Please note, public comment is limited to agenda items only at a committee of the whole meeting. So this relates to the Milford Public Schools before and after school program and the transportation first reading for revision of the student walking distance. And we are being televised tonight. So is there anybody who'd like to address the board?
My name is Tom Jagodzinski, 27 Berkeley Terrace. Last meeting, a parent spoke who had been turned down when she requested busing because she was diagnosed with cancer and had to undergo chemotherapy. The answer she got was no exceptions. I can't believe how callous and unsympathetic this district is. I can't believe that not a single member of this board publicly apologized for this incident. I can't believe that no one has proposed amending the policy to allow for reasonable exceptions for hardship cases. I encourage the board to amend the policy. This has been an embarrassment for our entire city, and it should not happen in the future. Thank you.
So board members, since this has come up, I will report to you, please, if I could have a moment of personal privilege. After the speaker last month, I did go back and check my email regarding the letter that she had sent us. There was one email that we got on October 29th. At the time, I had immediately gone to Mr. Riccitelli and asked him if this family had gotten bus accommodations and was told they had been. So both of the children were on a bus as of October, offered a seat on the bus, had a seat assigned to them as of October 29th. I take responsibility for not acknowledging the letter. She sent the letter to us as her public comment, her written public comment, because she couldn't attend the meeting. We all got the email. I could have acknowledged it. I didn't, and I have since called the woman and apologized for that. I've spoken with her. But I did ask Mr. Riccitelli to provide me with the details of the situation, and the correct information is that after several conversations with the mom and Mr. Riccitelli and Judy Meslagidis over the course of the summer, her younger child was given bus transportation effective on the first day of school under one provision of our policy, so that was taken care of. The older child was given a bus accommodation effective October 1st under another provision of our policy. So both children were assigned a seat on the bus for the entire year last year. The media really did not did not. Mr. Riccitelli, I'm sorry.
You said that they were had a seat on the bus for the entire school year.
I'm sorry. The older child was effective October 1st. Okay. So it was. She did have a lot of conversation with the transportation office. She did send us the one email. And as I said, I did make sure when I got the email that the issue had been addressed with the family, and it was addressed with the family. And there was a suggestion had been made by Mrs. Meslagidis to the parent that maybe, family member or a neighbor or somebody could help out for that first month of school with the high school child. And that is, in fact, what happened, is that there was a family member who, a friend in the neighborhood who drove her son to school. And my understanding is that might have continued after October 1st, but they were assigned a seat on the bus. So I just did want to make the board aware of that. And I was going to report on this at our next meeting under my chair's report, but I'm telling you this now. But I did call the woman, and I did speak with her, and I apologize for not having acknowledged the email.
Sue?
Yes.
Am I allowed to comment on that? Should I?
In what way?
In my conversation, from my understanding, is the woman wanted an exception before October 1st because of testing and things that she had to go through. Mm-hmm. And October 1st was an inconvenient time, and her concern was, here we are supposed to be a small city with a big heart, and we can't find a spot for her child to sit on the bus, or her son or her mother's going through advanced breast cancer. And to me, because I too emailed her back after hearing last week, and found it deplorable that the situation was addressed that way, that we actually made her wait till October 1st.
So if
and
I'm sorry.
I know policy is policy, but I would have believed that this would have been extenuated circumstances because, the mother could not have been, maybe she was going through such a situation that she might not live till October 1st.
Okay, let's not get into that, Mr. DeRosa.
Okay. So that's my own comment that I want to make on that, because
So if I can, there are legal implications to this as well. If the board so desires, I can have Attorney Dugas be here at the next meeting if you want to have a conversation about exceptions. And I mean, there are legalities in terms of having to, if you make an exception for one person, you have to make an exception for everybody. And I do know that the Transportation Office gets lots and lots and lots of, can you quantify it, Mr. Riccitelli, how many calls you get in September, early in the year of that nature?
Well, we get many requests for accommodations and exceptions which are outside our policy. Our policy allows us to make exceptions for student conditions, students that have 504 plans or have injuries or illness or sickness. We can make exceptions in those cases, but we do get, as Mrs. Glennon said, a number of requests because the family, different kinds of illnesses. We hear about different kinds of illnesses, ailments, child care issues, grandparent problems. We hear of many issues that come to our attention, and it becomes very arbitrary. Whose exception, whose hardship do you make an exception for, and whose do you not? And I would just say, and I know that this is not really part of the agenda tonight, but I would just say that a few years ago, or a couple of years ago, when the board was looking at how many, at that time we were calling them courtesy riders, but riders that were on the bus who lived within the walking distance guidelines, why were they there? And I would venture to guess that many of those got on the bus because of exceptions that were made throughout the years and were just never taken off the bus. And that's how we got to that point where there were so many exceptions that were made and so many, once it becomes one person, then it becomes a neighborhood. And it's, the board can go and, again, as you said, Mrs. Glennon, the legal counsel can talk about, the pitfalls of adding exceptions, but then it becomes really, how far do you go? And who do you say yes to? And who do you say no to? And whose judgment is that going to be?
So this would be something if, this board is coming to an end of its term. My suggestion would be that, we perhaps refer this put it forward to the next board as something they might want to talk about. But it is something that really legal counsel needs to weigh in on. There's federal equal protection laws and things like that, and while I think it may seem that it's taking a hard line, but we do, as a board, we do need to look at the legality of things. It's part of our job. Mr. Wiskeyman?
From a budgetary impact, a complete exception for everybody would be to bus everybody. Mm-hmm. I believe you mentioned the cost of that about I know you were just guessing, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 or so. And perhaps at the next board meeting, if the policy is really of that much concern, there should be a discussion about that and some consideration as to accommodating everybody. But there's a cost to that, and there's no reason the board can't have a discussion at some future meeting about that. If not this board, the next board.
Right. Well, at this point, this policy revision addresses just that.
I understand it. We're not toying this particular policy revision at this time.
So I just wanted to put the facts out there regarding the. We really need to move on to the rest of public comment. That's what this is supposed to be. So who else would like to address the board?
Pat Mulhall, 49 Crescent Drive. I have to say that, as you know, I would like the children to be bused. as they were for 30 years. And Mr. Riccitelli, I so admire you. You know that I had come seeing you when you were the mayor. I have been encouraging you to be part of the kids. The issue that I have is that we are constantly talking about children as if they are dollars and cents. They are not, my friend. They are not, and I'm so sick and tired of it. They weren't courtesy riders. They're riders for 30 years. My God, I was 17 years old when they were picked up. That's not a courtesy. That's a lifetime. We provided ridership to these students who became doctors and lawyers and teachers. And some of them may work at Walmart and do a great job. And they're building businesses in Milford Center. But guess what? Bick left. Our businesses are not going the way we want them to go. We need professionals out of this town. And we're nickeling and diming ourselves to death. How will we get them to school? Guess what? We need to get them there. I'm so tired of the banter. And it already sounds like so many of you have made up your mind. Well, how much will it cost? Well, don't you think that we could just ask them to be courtesy riders as of day one? No, it's ridiculous. Be adults and make decisions based on children, not based on dollars and cents. And I have to tell you, this is not happening across all of Connecticut. And yes, we find ourselves in budgetary issues all across Connecticut. We get our children to school so that they can learn. And I know this. When we talk about SRBI, RTI, we don't think to ourselves, well, could they be tired after walking 10 hours to school? We don't ask ourselves that. As professionals, we wonder if it's ADD. Is it OCD? Is it drinking at home? Is it drinking from the child? We don't wonder about exhaustion. So is there a difference between a mile and a mile and a half? Yup. There is. And we're just not talking about this gigantic elephant in the room. Is there a difference? Yes. And if I call and say, there's snow all the way there, you know what I get? Call Milford Police Department. Then I call Milford Police Department and they say, we can't do anything for 24 hours and we don't want to be the town that has everybody get a ticket. Well, no, we wouldn't. We'd rather have children trudge through the snow and have board meeting after board meeting after board meeting and revision after revision. Send our kids to school. I want doctors, I want lawyers, I want architects. I want children to meet their full potential. I don't care if they have OCD, ADD, ADHD. I don't care what comes after their name. I want it all for every single one of our kids. And I always have. And the people who've been here the longest know that that's my commitment. You may not have seen me in a while, but I've been watching. Now, on a totally different note, Dr. Feeser, I have to say, I so admire you. And for anybody who has ever said that you are un-American, let me tell you, I think you are the most American of all of us. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, from my husband and myself, for saving Milford in our hour of tragedy. And the idea that anybody could have forgotten that, even for a slight moment, over a costume and a candy bar, is a disgrace. So I love you, Dr. Feeser, and thank you for bringing us through these turbulent
15
times.
seconds.
And I will take my 2 seconds to say thank you.
Anybody else would like to address the board this evening?
You all know me. I'm Carol Thomas, 84 Thompson Street. Happy birthday, Jen.
Thank you.
I could tell you that I am the person that asked for the meeting with the mayor. I wanted to be proactive. I wanted to know, what are we going to do before the snow even falls? Let's come up with a plan. Well, I could tell you there wasn't much done. It was, good job, Carol. We'll buy you some shovels. 40 of them. 40 shovels they wanted to buy me. so I could have students shoveling sidewalks so that they could get to school. Does anyone not see the irony of that? I would love to tell you all about the meeting I had with the mayor, the assistant mayor, Mr. Riccitelli, Chris Saley, and Jeff Nielsen, and Mrs. Krasinski. We walked out of there thinking we were on an episode of Friends. It was a comedy. We were placated. I wanted to know, what are we going to do? I could tell you I've called the police department. I've reported sidewalks not shoveled. Mr. Grego said to Mr. Riccitelli, is that what you do? Do you report it? Yes. Mr. DeGrego, the question you should ask, do they get resolved? And I can tell you they don't. They don't. I'd like to know how many fines we gave out last year for unshoveled sidewalks, because I have a list of emails from parents throughout Milford who are concerned that their kids will get hit, harmed, injured. They just want their kids to get to school. We're not asking you to bring a Rolls or a Lincoln or a town car. Just let them get the bus. Yes, they're still going to be walking in the dark. They're still going to be walking in the rain. They're still going to be walking in the snow, whether it's 1.5 miles or 2 miles. But if you shorten it, that shortens the possibility of danger for everyone. And I can't understand why you don't see it. It's just common sense. If anybody, any of you board members want to help me, let's do something together. I'm tired of Milford being in the news for negative. We've got to do something right. We do a lot of things right. We do a lot of things right here. We just need to talk about it more. And I'll be the first one out there telling everybody, if you change the walking distances, how proud I am to be from Milford, and how proud I am to have my youngest 2 children in Milford Public Schools. Please, I know I've asked you 100 times, probably 99. Take the walk yourself. I know where you all live. I know the distances to your elementary schools, to your middle schools, to high schools. If you won't put yourself in that position at 6:30 in the morning, please don't ask our students to do that. Please just do what's right for the kids. And I believe it or not, I have confidence that you will. I know. You're probably all laughing at me because in my head I could hear myself laughing. But I do. I believe that you will do what's right. And you know, Dr. Feeser is fantastic with a budget. And if you guys say it's going to be $288,000 for a bus for the rest of the students to shorten up that distance and make it a little safer, I have no doubt in my mind that that money will be found somewhere. There will be some way. She's fantastic at budgeting. Give her the chance to do it. Please help our kids. Thank you.
Danielle Pastor, 78 Fifth Street. I just want to piggyback off of what you said about the snow and the sidewalks being shoveled. I live, on Hill Street, so we had to go over the bridge to get near Carvel, just for those of you that don't know. And when we called to say the bridge hasn't been shoveled, they shoveled just the sidewalks on the bridge. Once you get over the bridge, there's nothing shoveled. The 2 corners down there had 3 feet of snow plus, plowed up them all winter long last year. So great, my son can walk over the bridge, but then where does he go? He's got to walk on 3 feet of snow plus to press the button to get that crosswalk. And then he has to walk in front of Stop and Shop, where there's always a green light. There's never a time where there's all the cars and all the traffic are stopped. He's got to put himself in danger every morning. So as a parent, whether it's weather, I know you don't want to discuss weather being an issue, it is an issue for me. And as an educator, because I teach in a different town, it saddens me that you would put not just their safety, but their education at risk with all the testing, with the Common Core, with everything we have these days, to say, you know what, get up earlier, get out there and go through the snow and the rain. Walk 45 minutes to school carrying your backpack. It bothers me as a parent and as an educator. And the fact that you can't see this, and we're still, I remember coming here last year, having the same conversation. They keep going round and around and around. And the fact that you think 250 students, I think it said in the paper, is not worth the 288,000 sickens me more than you know. And it should sicken you.
Susan Krashinsky, 60 Crescent Drive. I want to make a comment about the opt-in program from this year. Last year, parents got notified before school started that that was an option for them if they were, if their children were no longer getting the bus, that they could apply for busing. They would, if there was room on the bus, they'd get it October 1st. This year, as far as I know, no parents were ever notified. So the numbers that Mr. Rackatelli gave that seemed low in his presentation a couple of weeks ago, part of that, I think, is because there was no notification to parents that this was an option this year. And it wasn't put onto the Board of Ed website until after the Friday after the last meeting, October 16th. But no one was ever notified. So there are a lot of parents out there that the ones that did know about it either had kids that were notified the year before or had a neighbor that said, hey, by the way, you can, you know, your kid's not getting the bus, but you can apply for that. And again, I ask you to please consider in a couple of weeks when you're going to vote on this to put it in for all the reasons. And I was at that meeting a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was great that Mrs. Thomas requested something to try to be proactive in seeing if we could solve some of these problems before the snows fall this year. And I agree with Carol. I don't think that we were taken seriously. I think it was just a meeting to make the parents feel good that we were doing something. Carol had said something about maybe getting a few student volunteers only to help people that are disabled or some of the elderly families as a community service thing throughout the town. And it was jumped on like, hey, we'll buy you shovels and your kids can shovel the sidewalks. And that was the big idea that came out of that. And it was a little disheartening to see that that's where our city leadership thinks that time should be spent and how we can solve a problem when parents are being proactive and trying to work towards getting something solved ahead of time before the snows fall. So, thank you.
Bob Thomas, 84 Thompson Street. Currently, there are 7 students, high school students on our street that are considered walkers. I believe most of them are taking the bus as a courtesy. When my oldest son went to school, he took the bus every day. It was never considered a courtesy. It was a bus route. If these students did all walk to school, that bus would drive right past them as they are walking. In the next 2 years, there's probably at least 5 more students doing the same thing. If they're all considered walkers and the bus route stays the same, that bus is still going to pass right by them going to school. Currently, I think there's 3 or 4 actual riders on that bus. The rest are all the courtesy riders. It seems kind of foolish to me to have kids walking to school when the bus drives right past them to get to the same exact place. I think the change would help the students get them more prepared for school, and it would give them more time to think about their schoolwork as opposed to thinking where they're going to walk and not step in a puddle when it's snowing or raining or whatever. So it's up to you to do that. I hope you consider it and pass it through before this board goes out, and it would be on a good note that you did. Thank you.
My name is Lee Lepper. I live on 54 Nicole, right behind Ford High School. Both my children, 28, 25, both of them have graduated. The thing was that because we lived behind Florin, they had to walk to school, which was fine. Where was their walking route? Through the woods. And I guarantee that the Public Works will not come out and shovel through the woods. So when you take a look at some of these little situations that we have, and I fully agree with the ladies over here that we should take a look in the budget. Possibility, as Mr. Whiskeyman had said, what is the cost? Possibility of having everybody bused. And the gentleman just says the buses go right by his kids that are walking to school. Take a look at this situation. I think immediately we should take a look at the K through the 5. I think that should be mandatory busing for those children. The majority, I remember when my child had to go over to East Side, or not East Side, but over at middle school. I'm sorry, East Shore. And I'll never forget, she had to walk from our house, and I guarantee it was 1.5 miles. My streets do not have sidewalks, so she has to walk in the middle of the street. If the streets aren't plowed properly, there's ice in the streets, good chance of her slipping, falling, good chance for a child to get hit by a car. So what happened, my wife, she leaves for work at 6:45 every single morning. She works in the Bridgeport school system. She would have to take her there. She had to get there early, and that was the situation, because I left early myself, because my job entitles traveling all throughout the state and throughout New York. I think we should really take a look at the budget, start maybe possibly looking at some different systems that could possibly supplement the ones that we have now. They might be at a lower cost. Who knows? You know, when you sign a contract with a bus system, the Durham, are they the cheapest? Do we investigate that? Do we?
Of course.
Okay. Are there other local, maybe small van companies that could possibly take some of the children that are in areas that we don't need to have a big bus go to, but maybe a van to take them? Take a look at that situation. That might be something that would be profitable for us. As every one of these people say, it's the safety of the kids. When they're walking down the street because there's no sidewalk, they can't because the snow's plowed, some car is slowing down. Who knows? That car loses control. They're texting, they're talking on their phones, they hit that child. What are the consequences going to be in that situation? That extra $500,000 that you spend for the busing might be a $2 to $3 million lawsuit against the town of Milford. So these are some situations you should really take a look at, because you got to look at the overall outcome, what could possibly happen. But we should really take a look immediately and take a look at the K through the 5, because these kids are 5, 6 years old, and they're walking half a mile to school, areas that don't even have sidewalks, so they're walking down the middle of the road. Who knows if some guy in a van comes up and says, oh, can I give you a little ride, young girl or young boy? They don't know. They get in the van, they're gone. You know, kids at that age, even though the parents tell them all the time, be wary, you don't know. But this is something you should seriously take a look at. Thank you.
All right, Alex Thomas, 84 Thompson Street. Well, for my street, last year when I had to walk to my bus stop, and it was snowing, and every time it was snowing, I would have to walk up to my ankles in snow, or if I didn't want to walk in the snow, I would have to walk 2 feet from the sidewalk because it wasn't plowed correctly, and I would just have to walk and get in danger of hitting by a truck, like I almost did get hit by a truck.
Anybody else would like to address the board this evening? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, please.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.